Certainly one of the topics which need a lot of chizuk is the topic of kiruv. So maybe first we have to understand what exactly, where does it stem from, the chiyuv, the obligation to be involved in kiruv. So first of all, we have one of the mitzvahs, mitzvah deoraisa, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Hillel said, ze klal gadol b'Torah. If we love our fellow Jews, of course, we have to feel responsible for them. As Chazal say, Yisrael arevim ze leze. Am Yisrael are responsible for one another. We can't say, Hashomer ahi anuchi, am I responsible for what my brother does? Of course I am. And this stems from the mitzvah ve'afta lecha kamocha. That means just like we want for ourselves the best, and the best in Olam Hazeh, in Olam Haba, is Torah and mitzvot u'ma'asim tovim, tried and proved. I often say today, of course, we always had freedom of choice. And today also we have freedom of choice. But exactly today, what is the freedom of choice? So a person can decide he wants to be, on one hand, a human being. That's a good option. On the other hand, he can decide he wants to be a cat and jump into the garbage and roll in the garbage. That's about the only other option that we have. There's nothing left in the world outside to offer besides a garbage bin. And you can be a cat and jump there. So of course it's a tremendous chesed if we can help people, Yidden, who unfortunately, because of all sorts of circumstances which have happened in the world, who've moved away from Yiddishkeit, they have no connection with Torah mitzvahs, or they're not connected enough, and bring them closer. Bring them closer, different levels, as we will try and explain. The whole concept of Ahavat Israel and Israel Arevim Ze Leze is explained in many Sfarim, among them in the Ramak, in Tomer Devorah, explains that when Hashem created Adam HaRishon, He blew into him the spirit of life. That spirit of life was the neshama of Adam HaRishon. That neshama was colossal. It included within it all the 600,000 neshamot of Klal Yisrael, which are in fact subdivided into millions and billions of neshamot, which are all the neshamot which have been coming since Ma'amad Har Sinai till today. Billions and billions of Nishmos Yisrael, which come into the world. All of them were part of Adam HaRishon's Neshama. When he sinned, many of these Neshama, the Hazal say that, before that it says in a Posek in Yov, Efu hayita biyos di'aretz, where was your place in Adam HaRishon when I created him? In his head, in his eyes, in his nose, in his ears, in his mouth, in his hands, in his body, in his feet. That means every Yiddish neshama was a part of one of the Avorim, one of the Giddim of Nishmat Adam HaRishon. That's a Hazal. When Adam HaRishon sinned, so Hazal Darshan, Vatashet alai kapecha netma'ata komato ad mea ama. Before he sinned, he was colossal. He was misofa olam ve'ad sofo, from one end of the earth to the other. After he sinned, he became smaller, not only in Gashmis, but in Ruchnis as well. Many of the very, very holy neshamas left him. They went up to their source. Others remained in him, which he gave over from them to Cain ve'Hebel. And others still fell down. They were nifgemu, like they were blemished by his sin, and they fell into the pits, borot nishbarim, the broken pits of of the forces of evil, who took hold of them. From the time of Adam's sin till Avraham Avinu, these nishamot came down in the Umus HaOlam as well. Dora Mabul, Dora Plaga, Sdom Amorah. But from Avraham onwards, he was chosen. He became the Miyased of Klal Yisrael, and all these nishamot were given over to him. And they slowly transferred into the lot of Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, the Shvatim, the Shivim Nefesh, and then he went on to the Shishim Rabo and to all the nishamot of Klal Yisrael, all from that nishama of Adam Arishan. Ummah Olam don't have a chelek in Nishmas Adam Arishan. Ger Tzedek, of course, he'll get a nishama, a special nishama, one of these. And Hasidei Umot HaOlam, who keep Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach because they believe that Hashem commands them to do so, they will receive a small neshama. If a year's neshama has 613 parts to it, corresponding to the Mitzvahs Essay and Lotase, 248 and 365, so the neshamas of the Chasidei Umot HaOlam have 7 parts to it. But it is a neshama that has nitzchias. The Rambam, Hazal say, the Rambam, the Ramhal, שחסידי אומות העולם יש להם חלק לעולם הבא. So, since we are all connected, we have one source, which is Adam HaRishon, and the source of his neshama was Mipi Hashem Yisborach, who blew into him the spirit of life. So all of us are one soul, part of one soul, parts of one soul. So the Ramak says, can you imagine one part fighting the other part? Would the person take a dagger in his right hand and stab his left hand? We are one and the same. All of Klal Yisrael are one. So we have to love one another, and we have to be responsible for one another. Now, if the Pasuk says, Olam Chesed Yibone, the world was created for Chesed. So if we say that it's speaking about material Chesed, like to give charity, to help the poor, to help those who need and lacking, that's a small Chesed, because the true Chesed is in Ruchnis. If we can mizake Yidden in Torah and mitzvahs and do them this favor of Chesed, Ruchni, that is the biggest Chesed we can do. If a person just gives a person a few pennies, so he can buy a pita falafel, and Leumad that, he gives him, he's mizake him to be a Baal Tshuva and keep Torah and mitzvahs and give him Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. It's a completely, totally different level of Chesed, the biggest and highest level of Chesed we can imagine. Hazal tell us about Haman and the Greeks, that the sin of the Greeks was worse, because those who Haman would have killed would have gone straight up to Gan Eden. But the Greeks' method, which was assimilation, it means taking them out of Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, completely annihilating them spiritually, which is a much greater sin. So today, when we look around us and see what's happening, if the Holocaust, in the Holocaust we lost 6 million Jews. In assimilation they say it's past 40 million already. Just in the last few years. When those who believe in statistics for Yidden as well, I don't, say that in about 20 years there won't be any Yidden in the world. Everyone would have assimilated, according to the rate of assimilation that we see. Just dry numbers. Of course, that's nonsense, but just to know how serious the threat of assimilation is, of Jews losing their Jewish identity, their spiritual identity, and just going off to become going. So the biggest chesed we can do to a person is to mizake him through kiruv, to bring him closer to Hashem. Obviously, there are many levels of kiruv, of outreach. I would say, usually when we deal with people who are not so young, say in the late 20s, mid-30s, late 30s, and beyond, it's not so expected that they're going to become true B'nai Torah and understand Torah and learn on a high level. That's probably, certainly not in the majority of cases. I wish it would be, but it seems to be that that's not. But even that type of kiruv we can't look down upon. Just to bring a yid, even at the age of 35 and 40, closer to Yiddishkeit, and help these type of people get married. And then they'll have children, and they'll have a Shomer Shabbos home. They maybe kovei etim leTorah a bit. But their children could end up being Talmud Torah, yeshivas. They could become Talmidei Chachomim. So it's untold of how much good can come into the world, even in this lower level of kiruv, which is not going to really make such huge changes in the lives of these people who are not young anymore. That's how I see it happening in the world. But on the other hand, as I say, the outcome can be tremendous. And if some of these people are say, working people and they're successful in business, they can be Tomchei Torah and have the Maila of Zvulun with the Soscha and build Torah in the world. So there's a lot of good that can come from it. Besides the fact that every Yid who is Shomer Shabbos, Taras HaMishpocha, wears tefillin, eats kosher, that's tremendous achievement. Of course, much higher level of kiruv would be when we work with youngsters. Maybe even better while they're still bochrim. That's the ideal age to start getting involved in learning. Because this age bracket, they can usually go on learning. Many of them can become Talmidei Chachomim. They could become leaders in Klal Yisrael. They could become very involved in further kiruv, which is really the tachlis. The emes tachlis in kiruv is to make Yidden B'nai Torah. I say very often, I said it recently, the opening speech at the Haskalah of Agudas Yisrael a few months ago. So I said there's a very big misconception which has become very much accepted in the whole world as an absolute truth. That in Klal Yisrael we have two sections. We have Yisoscha and we have Zvulun. So Yisoscha sits and learns Torah. Of course, he's learning day and night, so he needs support. And Zvulun supports him. And who's Zvulun? Zvulun is someone he may have learned when he was young. He may have been in yeshiva. Even he could have been in koila. And then at some time he went into business. He was very successful. Hashem has blessed him. He's very rich. And he wants to support Torah. And you hear often from the Zvuluns, that please daven for me. I want to be able to give more. I want to support more Torah and build more koiladim and yeshivas. And what about your own learning? Is avada and kovei etim leTorah. In the morning I have a daf yomi shiur. In the evening I learn some halacha. Shabbos I learn Chumash, Rashi, Baruch Hashem. So that in truth is a big misconception. Reb Chaim Volozhiner says, he brings the machloikes of Rishmoel and Rashbi about whether a person must just sit and learn and leave his parnosa to Hashem, or he must have a parnosa and learn with it. So he makes peace between them. He said it's not a true, end-to-end machloikis. They both agree that the special cases, the most talented and capable of Klal Yisrael, who can learn day and night and become Gdoilei Yisrael, of course they have to learn Torah day and night. And he says that's why the Gemara says, Harbe asu Reb Shimon bar Yochai velo alta be'adam, which implies for the majority it didn't work, but for the minority it worked very well. Alta be'adam. And Rabbi Shmuel says, no, haneg b'hem minhag derech eretz, that means with your learning have Torah. So he says that's speaking about the general public of Klal Yisrael. So by them, they have to learn a lot. They have to learn. The Rambam gives a good equation. He says 9 hours learning, 3 hours work. I mean, everyone quotes the Rambam. You're not meant to take money from a koilel. You're not meant to be supported. You have to work for a living. And he writes the equation: 9 hours learning, 3 hours working. And the Or Chaim HaKadosh writes in his Sefer Rishon LeZion that if it's the other way around, no one agrees that a person is allowed to say, I'm a working man. Unless he's starving. That's another thing. Anyhow, the Nefesh HaChaim goes on to say, and that's his maskana, that the heter for being a working person is that you set aside time to work as much as you need to earn bread and clothing. Lechem lechol beged lilbosh. So if you assess that to earn enough for you and your family, bread and clothing, and you have to work, say, 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day for that, that's how much you're allowed to work. Beyond that, you have to learn day and night. There's a problem, you want to be as Zvulun, you want to be a rich man, a billionaire, you can. Hashem can bless you 4 hours and you'll be a billionaire. Anyway, all the billionaires are illiterate people. I get letters from them, every word is a spelling mistake. Those who work for them are all with, diplomas from the top universities all over the world, and they just get a meager wage. And this guy is tucking away the billions in the bank, and he is illiterate. As they themselves admit, they make mistakes, they make money. They lose their brains, they lose. So if a person sets aside a minimum time, what he needs for lechem lechol beged lilbosh, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says that's enough, and the rest of the time he must learn. And he goes on to say, look how stupid people are. Where Yegia helps, they don't want to invest, Yegia. And where Yegia effort and toil and labor doesn't help, they're killing themselves. So he says, in Torah, we know that Yegia said Torah helps. Why? It says, Yagata umatzata. If you're misyageh in Torah, if you work hard, you'll be successful in your learning. But in Parnosa, he says, Yegia doesn't help at all. Why? It was already decided in Rosh Hashanah how much you're going to work. So if you stay up late and wake up early and run and scream and jump and yell and go crazy and work day and night to make more, you're not going to make 1 penny more that was already designated for you on Rosh Hashanah. That's exactly what you're going to get. And it was decided on a normal working day, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. But you don't have to kill yourself for that. It's decided already. You're going to get it as long as the pipeline is open. By the way, many people all over the world recently have big problems with tax evasion and money laundering. So I tell them that they should know that when we say that was decided in Rosh Hashanah how much you're going to make, it's after taxes. So we see from here that every individual has to be a Ben Torah. There's never a heter for a person to say, I'm a Zvulun, so I work hard and I earn money and I support Torah. A Zvulun also has to be a Gadol b'Torah. He also has to learn day and night and be Messiagent, and that's his Aseh Toratcha Keva u'Melachtecha Arai. That's the main thing. He works, but Melachtecha Arai, that's by the way. Why? Because anyway it doesn't depend on him, it's all from Hashem anyway. It's already been decided. What he's going to get is going to get. So this is a whole misconception that Zvulun doesn't have to learn. In the old days, there are many examples in all the communities, Ashkenaz, Farad, that they were Gdoilei Israel who used to work a couple of hours to earn a living because they wanted to be Ne'ena mi'Yigiam and have the bracha of Gadol ha'Ne'ena mi'Yigio Yoyser mi'Yirei Shamayim shene'emar יגיע כפיך כי תאכל אשריך וטוב לך, אשריך בעולם הזה וטוב לך לעולם הבא, אשתקע כגפן פוריה בירכתי ביתך, בניך כשתלי זיתים סביב לשולחניך. Wonderful brachas for a person who earns his own living. So they wanted to earn their own living. Chaim Pelagi writes in his book that his uncle Rabbi Hazan, the son of the famous Hikri Lev, he was sitting in his shop, of course, learning. And the Dayanim and the Rabbanim and the Shiva Tovi Air of Izmir came there and said, Rabbi, we are appointing you the chief rabbi of Izmir. Which in those days there were hundreds of great Rabbanim there. And he was chosen as the chief rabbi and he was sitting in his shop. So this is, people can be a Zvulun and they can be a Yisoscha, they can be Gdoilei Torah, and that's what we're meant to be. So when we're speaking of Kiruv, of course the ultimate purpose is to be able to work with young people who, if they start learning when they're young, they can grow and become Talmidei Chachamim. How much do they have to learn? In my opinion, they have to learn at least when they get to a stage, they can learn Gemara Be'iyun on their own. Because then, when let's say they have to earn a living, they're going to get married, have children, maybe they'll move back to America, to Europe, wherever they come from. Okay, they may not remain all their life as a Kollel man. But if they have with them the kelim to learn, they can always grow and always learn. If they have a shaila, they know how to open up a Shulchan Aruch and read the Mefarshim. If they have to learn, they can learn, teach their children. They can teach their children, they learn it enough. So that's the bare minimum that a person must get to. Of course, some people come for a year and they get a little taste of learning and they certainly become more serious in keeping mitzvahs. And when they go back, they'll build a Jewish home and they'll maybe, work and learn a bit. Okay, that's also good. But we have to aim high, we have to know. It seems very clear that Hashem has a very special divine plan in this generation of building up Olam HaTorah. Because of what we see happening in the world, both here in America, all over, we see what we never had before. In Europe, before the Second World War, all the Litvische yeshivas, the Mir and Slobodka and Kamenetz and Radin, and just go on and mention them, there were 2,000 Bachurim in the yeshivot, 2,000. That was the total. And how many Kollelim did they have? Maybe 5. Maybe. In the whole of Lithuania. Of course, there were Batim Medrash and the Bali Batim learning and Talmidei Chachamim learning. Of course there was. But when we speak of the concepts of yeshivas and Kollelim, this was the story. These are the figures. And what can we say now? Speak about Yerushalayim. Every corner and every neighborhood has yeshivas and Kollelim. You have tens and hundreds and thousands all over Israel. In America, you have, many, many towns with huge yeshivas and Kollelim and moistes, yeshivas ketanas, yeshivas gdoilas. It's something unbelievable what's happening in the world. So when Mekarev Rechoikim, we must be Mekarev them to some level of learning, that they should be part of the Olam HaTorah, with all the implications of being a Ben Torah. A Ben Torah is something, the most special thing that we can imagine. Even by Baalei Tshuvas, someone who did Tshuva when he was still a bocha and learned in yeshivas before he got married, etc., he becomes a total Ben Torah. But someone who, it happened to him at a later age, maybe when he's already married, maybe in his mid-20s or more, he doesn't become a total Ben. It's almost impossible. The chinuch of a yeshiva, the hasmoda, the shiurim, the vadim, musa, hashkafa, how a person is built up, there's no substitute for that. This is the only hope. So we have to try and attract as many people as we can at younger ages and fit them into the yeshiva system, let them grow to be Talmidei Chachamim. I know that there are differentiators even in Kiruv. I mean, there are some organizations that are totally centered only on Kiruv. Everything is Kiruv. So even if they have some good Talmidim who learn for a while, it's to make them ready for the next stage of Kiruv. They don't see them as individuals who can become Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbonim, Moirei HaRoes. That's not in the parasha. Everything is about outreach and outreach and outreach. And really, it's quite a big mistake. Because, like a Moshel and the Chofetz Haim, if you have a cup half full of water, and you start giving people to drink, in a minute it's over. But you have a cup which is overflowing, so everyone can drink. There's enough for everybody. It's overflowing. A person also has to be overflowing with Torah. He has to be a Talmid Chacham. He has to learn. The more a person knows, the more he can help others. The better he can teach them. The better he can explain things. Says Dam Ashiv Epikores. Not everyone can answer questions of the Epikorsin. It's not so easy. You have to be on a very high level. You have to know many Sforim, Be'iyum, Be'avona, never mind Shas, Poskim. So the aim of the Baal Tshuva movement should be very much centered of building up Talmidei Chachamim. Those who will be able to learn and study on a high level. And then in Achenami, some of them will go into Kiruv, some of them maybe will choose to be Moirei HaRoes and Rabbonim, others will be Magidei Shiur, or teaching at different levels, lecturers, Darshanim. There's room for everybody. But the more a person learns and becomes a Talmid Chacham, the more he is capable of helping others. You also have to be aware that when we're dealing with people who are not showing Torah mitzvahs, even that there are levels and types. Like in about 180 years ago, the Haskalah movement started in Europe and destroyed and devastated millions of the best European Jews. Even the children of Rebbes were affected, the children of Rosh Hashivas were affected. The biggest and most holy names in Klal Yisrael, I don't want to say them out of cover, they were worried and for justified reasons that their children were going off the derech. The temptation for Haskalah, the temptation for university, which the Kavyochel, the Goyim opened up to the Yidden at that time, made them, it was in thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands who went that way. And many of them, like at the time of the Russian Communist Revolution. So these were the Mesitim, Madichim, these were the Moisrim, Malshinim on Klal Yisrael. Yidden, who became part of the communist regime, would go and tell the Goyim where there's a hidden yeshiva, where there's a Rav teaching, where there's a shul, where there's a Talmud Torah. They were the ones heading the battle to uproot Torah in the world. We all know the greatness of the Chafetz Chaim, Shmiras Haloshen, his famous Sefer, and his Tzidkus, and his Ahavas Yisrael. Unbelievable when you see this forum he wrote, besides the Mishnah Brura and the Chafetz Chaim, which are very much halachic Sforim, he wrote Sforim for everybody, for soldiers, for women, for children, for businessmen. He cared for every single Yid ba'asher hu sham. By him, it was impossible to hate a Yid. And yet there was someone, a Jewish guy, who every time he'd mention his name, and he mentioned him quite often, he would curse him, kloles nimrotzes. This was a person who was a Mesitu Mediach. He had learnt in the best yeshivas, and he became a poker. And he would go around the yeshivas speaking to very talented bochurim and try and convince them to leave the yeshivas. He can open them for them, the universities, the colleges. And one of the main ones he invested in was a bocher called Chafetz Chaim. He tried very, very much to pull him out of yeshiva and take him the other way. So every time the Chafetz Chaim would mention him, he would curse him. So what do we see here? We see what happened in Europe was something totally new in the history of Klal Yisrael. From the time of the Chorban, anyone knows anything about Jewish history, he knew that there was never ever anywhere in the world, north, east, west, south, that you would have collectively groups or large numbers of Yidden who don't keep Torah and mitzvahs, who are koifrim, and they don't follow the way of the Torah. It never existed. Look up all the tshuvas for him. Look up anywhere you want, the histories for him. You'll find out that there were individuals. This individual did this avera, and they write a big tshuva about it. This individual did that avera. But there was no one. There was not communities and countries of hundreds of thousands and even millions of Yidden who took themselves away from Torah. And this is what the Haskalah calls, which is the biggest destruction which we can imagine, which is really that we're still living in the whatever you call it, the ripples and the waves of that movement which started 180 years ago. The Haskalah never hit the Sfardish communities. A little bit, it started about, say, 80 years ago when the French and the English conquered the Middle East, and they opened up schools, and these schools had a very bad effect, very, very destructive effect. But even so, basically, the people remained with the Emunah Pshuta and with very basics in Yiddishkeit. So in Kiruv we have to understand, those who are the Tze'etza'im of those who went off the derech totally by derech Haskalah, of course the starting point is you have to try and make them believe in God. They're atheists, they don't believe. Or they claim to be atheists. And then you have to make them try and believe that the Torah is true. And everything has to be worked on and in a very intellectual way. But let's say by most of the Sfardish communities, basically, all the people, they may not be Shomer Shabbos, but they all believe in God, they all believe in the Torah. They have no doubt on that. It's difficult to keep. They were brought up in a free world, having a good time. But basically, the whole concept of Kiruv has to be in a different way. It has to be that literally just encourage them to improve, to learn, to do, and it can move quicker. But the battle is big anyhow, and it's international today. All over the world we have millions of Jews assimilating. So those who have had the merit to learn Torah, and they're in a place where they can teach Torah, and the yeshivas involved in Kiruv, of course they have a tremendous chiyuv to help Klal Yisrael in all the countries, in all the areas, and we shouldn't forget Eretz Yisrael. People think, oh, Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. I mean, you could go to places in Eretz Yisrael where it's Mamis Dom va'amoira. It's not nice to say, but the way people behave are like animals. Hashem Yirachem. So we have a lot to do here. Also, we have to remember the words of the Chazon Ish in his Igros. At the time of the Olim, that in the 1950s, when every month 5,000-10,000 Yidden were coming from the Middle East countries, mainly at that time, because the Arabs were kicking them out. And the Ilim De'az were trying to get many people involved in convincing the parents to send their kids to religious schools, yeshivas, whatever. But they didn't have enough koach adam. They didn't have people involved that could do the job, and we were losing thousands and thousands of Yidden who it was easy to convince, because basically they came from countries where they had yeshivas, they had rabbonim, they had, they have a connection with Yiddishkeit. And now it was being uprooted from them. So they asked the Chazon Ish if for a few weeks they could make use of the yeshiva bachurim, that they would also go out the rishum to try and help convince parents to send their kids to religious schools. The Chazon Ish forbade it. He said, in Klal Yisrael, we are all one, like we started off this talk, Nishmas Adam Rishon, we are all one person, one gigantic, colossal Yid, who is Adam Rishon. We are different parts and particles of his great Neshama. In Adam Rishon, you have the head, where the brains are. You have hands, which do. You have legs, which can run. So the Chazon Ish told them, it's written in his Igros, you can see it, I think, Helik Dalil or Hey. He says that the Askonim are the hands and the legs of Klal Yisrael. So they have to go out and do what they have to do. The Bnei Torah are the brains. If you cut off the head and try and dig wells or dig pits with the head, the whole body will be dysfunctional. Nothing will work. You need the brains in place. The Bnei Torah have to be in learning. That means those who think that Kiruv is only running around the street to try and get people into the Beis HaMedrash, that's not true. The biggest Kiruv is learning Torah. Those who learn Torah purify the air, purify the atmosphere, bring schusim to Klal Yisrael. A me'oirer, tremendous schus that Hashem sends us siyata d'shmaya, that memela, those who are working in Kiruv will be able to be successful in what they're doing. But of course we have to know that the main preference, the main ultimate purpose, and certainly all those who are Baalei Tshuva and learning and working, they have to know that their ultimate hope and dream should be that their children should be true Bnei Torah. Hatzlacha u'bracha.